welcome to the Challenge CupDate. We've been waiting on this for some live soccer to talk about, and we get to preview the NWSL Challenge Cup for you. We will have regular podcasts throughout the tournament. The schedule's not going to be daily because the Challenge Cup schedule's not daily, and it's a little complicated, but we're going to catch up and fill you in on everything going on out in Utah. I'm Jason Longshore. You guys know Jessica Charman. Hey, Jess, what's up?
You know, just looking forward to tomorrow, Jason. It's been a long time coming, and professional soccer back on this continent. So an exciting way for the NWSL to take the lead, I feel like.
Yeah, team sports back. I mean, ESPN's kind of screwed this up multiple times, as have, I think, Bleacher Report and so many other outlets. This is the first team sport back since the pandemic hit. And when you go back and look at where NWSL was, they were just starting preseason. They were really starting to get ramped up for the season, and everybody has been excited about the move to CBS and CBS All Access and all the different areas of growth for the league. Then it was shut down, and we didn't know if they would find a way to get on the field this year. This has been a lot of hard work from the front office. It's been a lot of hard work from Commissioner Lisa Baird to find a way not just to have some kind of an event, but to actually sell some new sponsorships and make this a move for the league that will bolster its future.
It's very impressive because for a lot of the leagues, when you look in Europe, you know the financial gain that they're getting from playing the games. Yes, it's expensive to do it, but they're going to make money back from it. Here, you've got to imagine NWSL is taking a pretty big hit to put it on and to put it on safely with all the testing, with all the extra travel requirements. But they're doing it because they believe in the league and they realize that perhaps if you don't get something going this year, and with the history of women's soccer and the professional leagues, you're putting yourself at risk for potentially damaging, 2021, 2022 and the future of women's soccer. So I'm very glad that NWSL found a way to do it, and keeping my fingers crossed. We've got one day to go without anything going crazy because we had something go crazy earlier on in the week.
Yeah, and that's the reality of where we are right now. You can have all the protocols, you can have all the testing procedures in place, and things can still break down because we're dealing with a virus that we didn't know what it was at the start of this year in this country, and it's been a huge challenge. The Orlando Pride is not going to participate in this. There's a lot of information that's still coming out of Orlando. Julia Poe's done an amazing job covering all this for the Orlando Sentinel. There were positive tests. There were inconclusive tests. There have been retests, but it still sounds like there's some just lack of certainty. The Pride won't be able to play in the event, and everybody took the safest, most conservative route here to not put anybody else at risk. It's a real shame for the league, but it's a real shame for the players of the Pride who worked hard to prepare. And as you were telling me, some players have had some real challenges just to get back into the country to prepare for this event.
Yeah, obviously I follow the Lionesses on Twitter, and I remember seeing Jade Moore putting about how she was going to be struggling with immigration. She'd managed to find the loopholes on how to get back into the USA to play for the Orlando Pride. And well, now she didn't need to do that in the first place because obviously they've had that opportunity torn away from them. And there's been a lot of players that have been vocal. I know we read Sydney Dwyer's tweet earlier on in the week about how frustrated she was, obviously coming back from her pregnancies and getting the first opportunity to play. I think it was Ashlyn Harris that posted about her testing. But what has impressed me is at first with the players' tweets, you could tell there was some animosity and frustration because they feel like certain players are at fault. But since then, they've been very vocal about not digging too deep, not trying to single people out, because at the end of the day, what good does it do creating that anger between teammates and damaging your team spirit? That at this point, it's too late to solo people out and blame them. And it's good to see leaders and more mature older players kind of trying to protect the young ones that might have made mistakes at this time.
Yeah, it's a shame that they're not going to be able to play. It's a shame that Sydney Leroux doesn't get back on the field. It would have been the first time in a couple of years. A lot of veterans in that team, a lot of big names in that team. Marta, Ashlyn Harris, Allie Krieger, a lot of players we would have liked to have seen in this event There are some other players who are going to be missing. There are some injuries. Carly Lloyd and Mallory Pugh from Sky Blue FC, Adriana Franch from the Portland Thorns. There are also 3 players who are opting out of the tournament. Megan Rapinoe of OL Reign, Portland's Tobin Heath, Utah's Kristen Press.
Huge names.
Huge names. A lot of U.S. women's national team names in there, and it grabs your attention. I think it has to be a concern for the league, for the event, just to overcome it. But it does create a lot of opportunity for the players who can step into these roles that these big names are leaving open. Exactly.
So you can take it on 2 sides. It's obviously disappointing for the league because these are big names that draw in a lot of attention from the neutral fans. NWSL and the Players Association did a great job of managing to guarantee that all players would get paid regardless of their participation. So that's a relief for those players who are making the decision based on fear for their family, worries about vulnerable risk members that they may live with, things like that. So obviously the league's going to be disappointed, though, because when you hear players like Megan Rapinoe aren't going to be there, you worry about those neutrals or those U.S. women national team that maybe haven't had an interest in a domestic league. But on the flip side, you've had a draft, you've got lots of rookies, you've got lots of youngsters that can now kind of take the bull by its horns and really have a chance to thrive and show that, you know what, you don't necessarily need big names. We can produce our own talent, and the college system has prepared me aptly. And I think that's what's going to be exciting, seeing a lot of these youngsters step up to the next level and perhaps on a more even playing field, because when you think about it, everyone hasn't played competitively for a long time. So that might swing in favor of those younger, less experienced players.
I think the other thing it's going to swing in favor of is to teams that have continuity. And there's nobody with more continuity than the North Carolina Courage. They have been one of the best teams in the world. They've got a full complement of players that's going to be at the Challenge Cup. They will be missing Jess McDonald in at least game number 1. She's been ruled out for tomorrow. But the Courage kicked things off with Portland. They beat Portland a couple of years ago in the final. They beat Chicago last year in the final. Are they the odds-on favorite for this for you?
Jason, when you win a final 4-0, you have to say that they're the odds-on favorite. I remember us watching that final and discussing after it, and North Carolina, the Courage, they're just on another level of the playing field. And you mentioned the continuity of the team, but you've also got to think about that squad depth. And when you're playing this many games, and you're playing this many games in a short space of time, having been off for a long time, that squad depth, and Paul Riley's going to manage his squad fantastically, I'm sure, is really going to help because they're able to rotate and bring on different players without worrying about the standard going down. So as much as he likes to claim that they're an underdog still, and I think it's a bit of a tongue-in-cheek comment now, there's no one else that you would bet your juice boxes on at this point.
The other thing that stood out to me in his media availability today is a lot of managers have talked about this tournament because, look, everybody's going to the knockout round. It's 4 games basically for seeding, and it's like a little mini season to prepare for a cup tournament. A lot of managers have talked about we're going to rotate the squad, we're going to give young players a lot of minutes early, we're going to ease into it. He's like, I can't wait to unleash my players.
And it just shows the faith he has in his players. He knows that they're ready. He knows that they're ready to play. And I'm sure he's seen in some practices that, when you've been cooped up in your house for however long some of these players have, that they're probably ready to get back on that pitch. And all of them have played together for a long time. And like I say, they have to be the team that's got the mark on their back, and everyone's going to be trying to keep up. And that, though, maybe the tournament structure makes people feel a little bit more willing that there could be an upset, because you just never know in the tournament structure. And with NWSL and the knockout rounds, it's straight to penalties too. So if you can hold them tight for 90 minutes, you can park the bus potentially for 90 minutes, keep out, Jess McDonald, keep out Crystal Dunn. You never know what might happen if it goes straight to a penalty shootout. So we might see some defensive strategies in those knockout games, knowing that you only have to hold out for 90 minutes.
The thing about North Carolina for me is that, we talked about Rapinoe, Press, Alex Morgan with Orlando. A lot of the big names from the national team are with other clubs. But the Courage have Abby Dahlkemper, maybe one of the best defenders that the U.S. has ever produced. Crystal Dunn, Sam Mewis, who I thought was outstanding in the last World Cup. You have two players who have been on the fringes of the national team program in Lynn Williams and Kristen Hamilton. You have a strong left back in Jaylene Daniels. You've got a top Brazilian midfielder in Debinha.
And she's brilliant.
She's awesome. You've got maybe Ireland's best female player ever in Denise O'Sullivan. You've got Stephanie Labbe, who's Canada's #1 goalkeeper. I mean, this is a world all-star team that can play with any team in the world right now, I think.
And you see that when they go play internationally. I remember watching the tournament where they play against the WPS, the Women's Super League champions, and North Carolina just look brilliant, and they're another level. And even though they have all these different cultures playing together, which can sometimes actually be a hindrance, Riley manages to get all of these players to work well together and be on the same wavelength. So, like I say, we get to see them tomorrow afternoon or tomorrow lunchtime, and I have nothing but confidence in them.
Yeah, and this is a team, too, that gets Merritt Mathias back after an injury last year. She wants to earn consistent time. She's going to be pushed because, to top it off, all that talent, they have 3 first-round picks from the last 2 drafts. They picked up Haley Mace in a trade, trading McCall Zerboni, who had lost her regular starting spot last season. They bring in Haley Mace, who has time at Melbourne City, has time in Europe. It's just such a deep squad. And for me, the way that Riley plays, this tournament actually suits him because you have 5 substitutions, and he loves to push the tempo, and he's got 5 subs to do that with now.
And we've seen it in the other leagues that have already started. Those 5 subs, you can use them, and it doesn't necessarily cut down. People worry about substitutions sometimes, that it makes it too broken down or you ruin your rhythm. But if you use them effectively and you're bringing on players from your bench, like Riley has the capability to do so, that are of equal ability as the players on your pitch, you're going to overrun other teams in the last 20 minutes because you're bringing on quality off the bench with fresh legs, whereas they're having to potentially reduce the level of their team by going to the bench. And that's a huge difference that North Carolina is blessed with.
So they face their longtime rivals Portland tomorrow in the big game on CBS, 12:30 Eastern time is kickoff. Portland will be missing Tobin Heath. They will be missing Adriana Franch. They do have Christine Sinclair, one of the best goal scorers in the history of the game. They have a lot of other talent as well. They added Becky Sauerbrunn as well. You talk about great defenders from the United States. Sauerbrunn's in that conversation as well. How do you look at Portland and the attack of Lindsey Horan and Christine Sinclair lining up against North Carolina?
I think against any other defensive line, you'd feel like you would be intimidated by the combination of Horan and Sinclair. Sinclair's a poacher. She's a fantastic goal scorer, and Horan's got that. She's just unpredictable, and she's got so much strength, and she's such a physical player that I love to watch. But you're playing against the best of the best when it comes to North Carolina. I think the biggest thing that the Thorns are going to have to be aware of is they are missing, Franch is their starting goalkeeper, but they do have a great goalkeeper in Eckerstrom on the bench who played in the W League in Australia, has experience. So I think the risk that Portland has is if they think too offensively, they're going to leave themselves exposed defensively. And when you have a goalkeeper that isn't necessarily your first choice, that hasn't played as much with your back line, that's when you leave yourself exposed. So I think they're going to have to find the right balance tomorrow between attacking, but also not leaving themselves vulnerable too much in the back.
Yeah, injuries are going to be a problem for them. I mean, missing Tobin Heath, she opted out. Franch being out. Sophia Smith is a player that I want to see a little bit more from. She's 19. She had 2 years at Stanford. She's coming off an injury. She's done really well in college, really well for the U20s, but she's not 100% coming in. You have a player with local ties for us who is coming back from an injury, Gabby Seiler, who missed most of last season because of an injury. She's from Peachtree City. You've got another player that some are starting to identify as somebody who could take advantage of Tobin Heath being out, and that's Tyler Lucy. She played 9 games last year, scored 4 goals. Portland feels like the team that could really have a new face step up to support Sinclair and Horan in this event.
And they need to. They really need to, because, you can't rely on Sinclair and Horan. You've got to add some strength around them to contribute. And I think the thing with the Thorns really is that they've got the toughest game to begin the tournament. They have those players coming back from injury. They need to be ready to play and not be playing as if they're concerned about their injury. So it's a big job of the athletic trainer. It's a big job of the coach to make sure they're only putting players on the pitch that are 100%. Because if you put someone on that's 95%, they feel something early on, they're not going to be playing their best. And then you can't take those risks against the number 1 team. You take those risks against smaller teams. But this is a real important game to go out and set the standard early on. And it's one of those where if it goes wrong, you're going to have to really rebuild yourself. So I see it being a closer game, but I just think the Courage just has the next level of depth that's just going to be that too much challenge.
See, I think I'm even more intrigued about the night game tomorrow night, 10 o'clock. It's on CBS All Access, the streaming service, Chicago and Washington. Chicago made the final last year. They're missing a kind of important player in Sam Kerr, who has moved on to the Women's Super League in Chelsea. But, this is a team with Julie Ertz. This is a team with a lot of talent. This is a team with one of my favorite players in the league that not everybody knows yet, Yuki Nagasato. Just a blast to watch. And it's a team with a lot of new faces.
You don't remember her from 2011? Surely U.S. Women's National Team remember her from 2011.
Maybe some U.S. fans are trying to block that out. 2011 wasn't a year they want to remember. The last 2 World Cups are what they want to remember. Nagasato's a blast, and she'll probably be the number 10 pulling the strings. But you've got new faces around her. What do you think about Chicago?
I like Chicago. Like I say, they were outclassed in the championship game, but they had a great run to get there. And I think that championship game, if you lose 4-0 in a final, a game that you have prepared for and that you envisage yourself with a chance of, winning a championship, and you kind of go out there and get embarrassed and outplayed, you take it either way. You either get deflated or you're completely motivated. And I'm pretty sure that Chicago will be motivated. They'll be going out with a vengeance, and they'll be wanting to prove that, they have an equal chance of getting through to the final and potentially righting some wrongs if it's North Carolina that they meet there. I love Nagasato. I think she plays incredibly. She's a mature player, but she doesn't show her age in terms of her speed or fitness because of the way that she plays. She lets the ball do a lot of the work. When you've got someone like Juliette just has the quality. She'll probably be playing centre back, I believe, because of injuries. They listed her as a solid defender when they released the roster, but she has a chance to bomb forward and make those exploding runs. She's always dangerous from set pieces. So that's going to be an exciting one. And of course, they've got Alyssa Nair in goal, who, if you want a leader out the back and you want someone with experience and you want someone that communicates, Nair's a fantastic goalkeeper. So that's always helpful when you can trust your back line. So Nair and Ertz, who have so much experience on the national team together and on the domestic league, that's a partnership that, as a coach or as a fan, you feel reassured by.
I mean, look at the spine of that team. Alyssa Nair, Julie Ertz is one of your center backs. Morgan Bryan, another U.S. women's national team veteran, has World Cup experience. Nagasato probably as the number 10. And we'll see if Rachel Hill, who they brought over from Orlando, 26 goals in 3 years with Orlando and Perth Glory in Australia, if she can not completely replace Sam Kerr, but replace some of the output that Sam
You're
Kerr
never
gave.
going to replace her, but you need to be able to find a way to cover that loss. Like she's a different level of player. Exactly. And you need to replace some of the goals or find goals that are more divvied up between the team. You've got to have people that can finish when they get the ball in front of the net, because Kerr, was a game changer in that impact.
Savannah McCaskill is one who could step up and give you more going forward. They added Keelia Watt as well, who came into the league with a ton of promise, was right on that edge of the women's national team, had an injury, and has been kind of struggling to regain her confidence ever since. Moves over from Houston. She could step up. You've got a lot of players, Tierna Davidson in the back, who can step up and take that next step. Chicago feels like a team that's building a complete squad like North Carolina. They just need those game changers that the Courage have.
Yeah, and that's the difference right now. And the Courage just have 3 more years of, recruiting. It's so easy to recruit when you're a team as successful as the Courage. People want to come play for you. And I think, where the Spirit went wrong is, not the Spirit, rather, I'm thinking about the next team. Where the Red Stars went wrong is that they didn't replace Kerr quick enough. And I know it's difficult with signing, but Kerr was very vocal about going to Chelsea early on. And I think they needed to be potentially recruiting earlier on once they knew that she wasn't going to be staying any longer in the US.
It's tough. And I think the NWSL, the rules were not maybe in place yet for Chicago to really compete financially with that. Now, at least, it feels like the league's learned from it. And now it's going to be more competitive in keeping top players in this league as they get offers, because they will get offers. Lyon's not going away and what they want to spend. Real Madrid's starting to ramp things up. Your Women's Super League teams, there will be some who will spend. So there's going to be offers for these players as they emerge. Chicago's got to find a way to replace Kerr, but how many times have we seen this in any sport where a team loses that figurehead player and somehow as a collective they actually get better?
Yeah, sometimes I think that one player can take so much attention and sort of be that big star. And even players on your team, you begin to think about this star so much that you constantly try and feed them the ball rather than working as a team. And when that big star goes, you end up seeing everybody's strength rather than one player's strength. So I guess we'll get to see tomorrow, and I'm looking forward to seeing how they gel together and survive or move on to the next stage of the Red Stars without Sam Kerr.
See, it's so funny the way these 4 teams lined up, because North Carolina is the shining star of this league. They have been for a while. They're not going anywhere right now. Portland has been there and is maybe trying to reinvent itself a little bit. Chicago got to the final last year, is trying to take that next step. Washington Spirit feel like a team that is the next Chicago, that can be that next one in line. They're really young. Rose Lavelle is coming off of an incredible 2019. Can she find another level to her game? Can you get a step up to support her from a player like Andy Sullivan? Washington's the team that I'm maybe most interested to watch how they do in this tournament.
I think they're the most exciting team. And when you have a player like Lavelle leading you in that, she's just the most remarkable player to watch. So enjoyable, plays with so much heart. I would call her cheeky on the pitch. Like she doesn't really care what she's doing. Like, it's exciting, it's unpredictable, and she's so talented. And you mentioned Andy Sullivan, who's kind of finding her way in the US women's national team. She is the composure that sort of works with Lavelle's unpredictability. And I think that's what's going to be so exciting when it comes to the Spirit. But what you do have to be concerned about the Spirit, and what might make things difficult for them in this tournament, is the 4 teams that they're playing during the preliminary stages, which will get them seeded for the knockouts. When you're playing the Courage, the Red Stars, the Thorns, and then the Dash on the end. But those first 3, what a way to begin your tournament.
It's going to affect their seeding, that's for sure. But knowing that you have the opportunity to build in this event, you want to hit your stride going into the last game. And maybe it's a harder road for them in the knockouts because of it, but they've got the talent to handle it. And
you'll have seen all 3 teams. You'll have seen the hardest teams. You'll have learned your lesson. Sometimes you want to play those harder teams. You want to have those struggles, have those battles, so that you can learn about yourself as a team. And then when you face them again, you kind of know what you didn't do right last time.
They've accumulated a lot of young talent, too. 5 first-round picks from the last 2 drafts. And some of the players are experienced as well. Sam Staub was the number 4 pick last year, over 2,000 minutes last season, not a rookie anymore. 23-year-old from Clemson, and some describer, ESPN describes her as one of the best passers in the defender pool. And when you have a player like Lavelle, when you have a player like Sullivan, you want to have players in the back who can pick out that pass, can pick them out.
Distribution.
Distribution and building, not just being a direct vertical team. Washington, if they can get everything in sync, they could be one of the most fun teams to watch.
And I think, like I said, I'm a bit biased because I love watching her play. When you have a player like Lavelle, as long as the rest of the team around her play like that too, you're guaranteed to have entertainment factor. And I think that game's going to be worth staying up late for tomorrow evening.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll run through quickly the games on Tuesday. We're going to preview these in a little more detail on Monday, but the other 4 teams will play Tuesday, and all the games are going to be 12:30 Eastern Time or 10 p.m. Eastern Time kicks. It's all about avoiding the biggest heat of the day out in Utah. The early game on Tuesday, it's Houston and Utah, the home team. Houston's one who has just had some bad luck. I mentioned Kealia Watt and injury problems. She was supposed to be a bigger figure for that team. She's moved on. Houston needs to make a bit of a statement in this event.
Yeah, it's one of those where they had a very disappointing season last season. That they're a well-known team, but they've never, the last few years, they haven't lived up to that reputation. You said they've had a lot of bad luck. Well, they got some good luck with Orlando. We talked about seeding again, and they were meant to have North Carolina and Chicago, and instead now they have the Royals and Reigns. So maybe that's the bit of good luck they need to sort of prepare them and get them mentally ready for these early games. And if you get a good seeding into the knockout round, you have a better option or a better way to get through to the semifinals.
Tell us about Rachel Daly. She's the new captain for Houston, it looks like.
Rachel Daly played with England. You're making me on the spot, Jason. Help me out here. I'm like, that name sounds familiar, but I'm on the spot, and now help me out, refresh my memory.
Well, I figured with the Lionesses link that would be the one, because she's going to have to step up, and she's a goal scorer, but she's going to have to step up from a leadership role because Watt is gone. Sofia Huerta is gone. It's a lot of new faces in Houston, and Daly's leadership is going to be key here. And another player that's going to be key is another local with Atlanta ties, Jane Campbell, who's been right there in that national team pool. France beat her out for the number 3 role with the last World Cup team, but Jane Campbell is another player that folks in Atlanta will be watching. But outside of that, Houston's a whole lot of new faces.
And that's what's concerning for a team. When you bring together a lot of new players and you haven't had ideal prep, you can't ever call the coronavirus pandemic a good place to prep with lots of new players because the training regimens have been different. You haven't been able to do the same team bonding. Things are a little bit awkward out there, and you have to worry about bringing all these new players together. And that is where you need a good goalkeeper like Campbell. You do need a leader with experience on the international level. So they're going to have to really work together to be those voices within the team to try and create a gel between players.
Bill Connolly over at ESPN has Cece Kaiser as the youngster to watch, and this is another young American player, midfielder. Connolly describes her as maybe the best player in Ole Miss history. Haven't seen many University of Mississippi players figure into the national team pool. She's played with the US U23s, number 13 player in last year's draft, and was an impact player off the bench. Somebody has to be that impact player for this team. I mean, Daly has scored goals. Daly's a player that, opponents fear, but it can't only be one. Somebody's got to take some of that pressure off.
It's too predictable. Yeah. If you have one player, again, we talked about Sam Kerr, who was special, but it gets to the stage where defensive lines figure you out, where you're in the opposition locker room and they're circling you as a threat, where they're saying, okay, this is how Daly likes to play. This is how you prevent her. Sometimes you have to be able to switch the dynamic. On certain days, a striker is going to be having an off day. You can't rely on one player, and that's when you need to bring someone on that's going to offer a different dynamic, that's going to offer a different way of causing issues for the defensive line of the opposition. So, like you say, we've mentioned squad depth, and hopefully that's a player that can offer some depth for the Dash off the bench.
So they're facing Utah, the home team, in that early game on Tuesday. And Utah's missing Kristen Press, and we know how big of a year Kristen Press had. I think Utah is a team that can handle that because of their veterans. And this is an older team, so you do wonder about fitness as the tournament goes. But they have maybe one of my favorite underrated players in American women's soccer, Amy Rodriguez. And they have a player who should still be playing for Spain, but there's issues between her and the Federation, in Vero Boquete. 33 years old, both of them, but still can do the business in an event like this.
Yeah, I think potentially with the tournament style, you're going to need to be able to have some youth to contribute, because it is exhausting playing, game after game in a short space of time. But at the same time, they're on home turf. I think that'll be, you don't have fans, but you sort of still have that home advantage of not having to travel, of having to prep. And again, you learn to play a style of soccer. A lot of players, as they get older, adapt their style of play. And I think that's what these players are going to be capable of. And you've got Kelly O'Hara there. But Utah's going to be missing, we mentioned her earlier, Becky Sauerbrunn, who obviously was traded. So that is quite a big loss, I feel like.
Yeah, Nicole Barnhart in goal. Can't be too happy with that one. But you've got Kelly O'Hara at 31, Boquete at 33, Desiree Scott from Canada at 32, Diana Matheson at 36, Barnhart's 38, Amy Rodriguez 33. The core is very good. You haven't seen any of those players look like they're at that age in the way that they play. But in this tournament, games come in fast. You've got to have some of these young players step up and at least give them the ability to rotate. Maybe game one, maybe Rodriguez and Boquete go 60 minutes. Maybe they go 45. And you rotate through those extra subs. Utah's a team that has to use them effectively.
The 5 subs is going to make a huge difference for a team like that, where, you know what, you've got to start thinking about game 2. If game 1 isn't going well, maybe you take off your big stars and you give them that break, because it's better to prepare for a second game than it is to drain out your stars trying to fight back too hard to get back into a game that might be lost.
So the player that multiple people have identified as one of those young players to watch was the number 8 pick in the 2020 draft, Ziara King from NC State. 48 goals, 19 assists at NC State. She's not going to come in and start. I don't think she has to be successful here, but she's one that's got to give you a 15-minute shift that produces an impact, a 20-minute shift, maybe more as the tournament goes on. A player like that's going to be vital.
Yeah, that's what we talked about again. We keep saying about the importance of the depth, importance of the bench, and she can guarantee herself minutes. She's going to be going into this knowing that she's going to get time off the bench. And if she has a great performance, you might get that opportunity to start. You may get by game 4, if things are sort of settled up, or it's not going to affect your standings anymore, maybe you do get those 90 minutes. Maybe you do get that start, and she's those fresh legs that the team needs. That's
a good point. I mean, with this format, you can, just say, and a lot of managers have said it, look, we're going to grow into this. Rory Dames of Chicago said it. We're going to play a lot of young players. We're thinking about 2021 as much as we're thinking about this event. Maybe she gets an early start, or maybe she gets that start late. She's going to play 90 somewhere in the first 4 games. I think that's a safe bet. A lot of young players will. And how they respond, that could end up being one of the real stories of this tournament.
Yeah, and that's why they needed a tournament like this. NWSL needed this tournament to allow those young players that have been drafted, that are starting their professional careers, an opportunity to get to play and show and potentially challenge. And, on a team where you've got older players, for those young players, what an exciting time it is to be able to guarantee those minutes and show, don't panic. You may have some players that are looking to retire, or they're in their golden years, they're almost done, but we've got fresh blood coming through, and that must be a really exciting opportunity.
So the last game on Tuesday night has the 2 teams that maybe have the biggest question marks on them coming into this due to absences and just due to where they are as clubs. OL Reign and Sky Blue FC. Let's start with the Reign. You have the rebrand. You have Olympic Lyon that is involved in the club now. You have no Megan Rapinoe in this event. You do have Alana Cook on loan from PSG, which will help them in the back. But how do you replace a player like Rapinoe? I mean, such a vital figure, such a huge figure with any team that she's on. It won't be easy for the Reign with a lot of newness going into this.
No, not at all. That's a player that you wanted to play, and the Reign has been pretty outspoken about the fact that she isn't going to be playing. There was some tongue-in-cheek comments about the fact that they haven't really seen her that much because of international duty and injuries anyway, but still, that's a player that when you have her signed, you're excited about because she offers so much quality. They are benefiting from that partnership with the new ownership, because I know it's seeing a lot of international players now coming in on loan, like you have Cook. But it's so difficult because Rapinoe is not just a player, she's a character in the dressing room, a character in the locker room that a lot of players probably gravitate towards. So you have to wonder if being so outspoken about the fact that she's missing maybe jitters that chemistry a little bit in the locker room.
So they do have the 2019 Rookie of the Year in Bethany Balcer, and a player that came from a college that, look, I'd never heard of, Spring Arbor University. Did not know Spring Arbor, did not know they had advanced to the last 4 NAIA Final Fours where Balcer played, 4-year starter.
This is the girl with the brilliant tweet, right? She tweeted about how a bunch of D1 girls were like making fun of her, and now she's a professional soccer player.
Yeah.
She's definitely worth a follow on Twitter. She's definitely proud of the fact that she went and played for a smaller school.
I mean, her story's amazing. She scored 129 goals in college. She got an invitation to training camp, was not drafted. Comes in to training camp as an undrafted rookie, makes the team, becomes the Rookie of the Year. She got some time with the national team this past winter in one of their camps as well. Scored 6 goals last year. That's a player that you're looking at to replace some of the impact that Rapinoe would give you.
Yeah, and I think because she went to a different school and she was always a bit of an underdog, that might help her in this. I mean, Rapinoe's some big shoes to fill, and certain players might not be able to handle that mentally. But I think going to an NAIA school and facing criticism and being kind of mocked for that decision or told that you won't amount to nothing, overcoming the hurdles of not making it after an invitational, but then signing, that's a sort of player with character that can't be manufactured. That's character that only happens through overcoming, the craziest of hurdles. So that's someone that I truly believe comes in with no chip on her shoulder, just comes in with a level head. And I think that's what you need to replace someone that's so infamous as Rapinoe.
It's funny with Reign because you see the Lyon branding and you know how big of a club they are in the women's game, and it feels like this is going to be a big club down the road. But without Megan Rapinoe, it feels like a very scrappy team with Balcer, with Shirley Cruz from Costa Rica, who will have an opportunity to replace Rapinoe on the field directly, with Sofia Huerta, who comes over from Houston, and it's another one of those players who's been right there in the group of getting into the women's national team, but hasn't been able to consistently get there. It's a team that we don't know too much about yet, but it's a team with a lot to prove.
Yeah, they are going to have a chip on their shoulder. When you're connected to such a successful team in women's soccer, there's expectations on you, and this is their first real opportunity. They only just got merged. They only just created their new logo. I think their uniforms are pretty rubbish because of that, personally. And the logo is a little, I will never unsee it. I saw a tweet from someone saying it looks like a lion eating a Pringle. And I will never unsee that logo ever again. But this is a big tournament for them. And like you say, we don't know too much about it. And maybe that works in your favor because you are the unknown team. People aren't able to prepare for you. You've had a lot of changes. You've got a different manager. And these are all things that can sometimes work in your favor because you do slip under the radar or people don't prepare for you amply. And then you have a chance to catch them off guard.
Oh, Sky Blue's right there with them in that last game because you think of Sky Blue, you think of Carly Lloyd, you think of Mallory Pugh, you think of Caprice Didasco. All are out due to injury. So you're looking at Sky Blue, and Midge Purce comes over from Portland, another player who's on the fringes of the national team, has a lot to prove. McCall Zerboni comes over from North Carolina. You get that veteran and definitely a leader in Zerboni, a player who was maybe the last cut before the World Cup. You have a top goalkeeper in Kaylin Sheridan from Canada.
That's my one to watch.
Is it?
100%. Oh, 100%.
What is it about Sheridan that makes her special?
Here's the thing with goalkeepers. When you play for a weaker team like Sky Blue, your goalkeeper's going to be the one that gets tested the most.
That's
so
true.
She holds the record for most ever saves in NWSL. She's got plenty of minutes. She's got plenty of time. And what I like about her, she's young. I think she's 24 or so. She's fearless, and she plays for a weaker team. So you have to always be prepared. And she's kept Sky Blue in a lot of games. She's held down the fort, and she has that mental resilience from 2 really tough seasons that I think if Sky Blue are on their way up, which I think they are, they're under a great coach who I've had personal experience with in Freya Kuhn when I was at Reading. And I think when you have a goalkeeper that's had so many struggles with playing with weaker defense, they're not afraid of getting battered, which makes them fearless, which makes them dangerous. So I'm excited to see her. Exactly. And they know what it feels like to concede. They know what it feels like to concede multiple times in a game. And that makes them more willing to put their body on the line because they don't want to have that feeling ever again. Goalkeepers don't enjoy picking the ball out of the back of their net. And when they have to do that consistently, even when it's not their fault, when they're the last line of defense, it creates this sort of barrier. And the more it happens, the more you don't want it to happen. And I think she's ready to make a change and lead from the back for Sky Blue.
See, that's interesting because you look at a team that, she's had a lot of work to do in previous years, and she's gotten a lot of experience. She's maybe improved quicker because of all that. But now you have teammates around her who believe in her, and they have confidence in her.
She's been able to prove herself to her back line.
Yeah. Yeah, they'll step forward a little bit higher. They know they can trust her to have their back if a save needs to be made. They'll be able to play a little more freely because you're not worried about the goalkeeper. That can help a team that, look, somebody's got to step up. Zerboni can be that figure in the middle of the field that you're going to notice. You're going to see her play. She's going to get stuck into tackles. She's going to be very vocal. But you've got to have somebody around that become what Carly Lloyd would be, scoring that goal that you need in that key moment, what Mallory Pugh can be, providing that energy and that quickness and that speed. You've got to have somebody else around those two step up, but that's a good core to start from.
And when you're losing, let's be honest, they're going to feel that loss of Lloyd and Pugh. That's going to be real disappointing. Was it both of them picked up injuries, right? That's not a COVID.
Yep.
And that's got to be a real kick in the teeth because a lot of pundits had them as a surprise package. When I was reading up on it, a lot of people thought that Sky Blue had a lot of potential. You've got some big stars. You've got a good goalkeeper. You didn't do too badly in the 2020 draft. But now, missing those two, you kind of have to mentally recover from that.
They have their rookie this year from the draft, Evelyn Vaines. She's Canadian. She is the all-time leading goal scorer at the University of South Florida. Kind of a wild card because nobody really knew what to expect when she came to South Florida. She produced consistently there. I mean, you look at the number of records she set. It's like broke the program career hat trick record, broke the program record for single season goals, game winning goals, season points, single season shots, like everything. She owns the record book. And now she's stepping up a level. Maybe a tournament like this for a young player coming out of college, taking their game to another level, maybe a tournament like this is a good way for them to get their first professional experience.
Yeah, and when you compare college, this tournament, it's not that different. College players are used to playing Wednesday, Saturday, or 2 games within a week. So that maybe favors them who have that recent experience of playing in such a short and compact schedule. And she's the goals you're talking about. She's definitely scored them on the collegiate level. And now it's important to see if she's able to make that step up because obviously it's a huge step up. But when you're used to smashing records like that, you're not going to be short of confidence. And I think that's what she's going to need to play. She's going to need to play fearless, and she's going to need to play with confidence and kind of not get too psyched out about the fact that this is, professional rookie year.
All right, I don't think we're even going to get into who we picked to win the tournament because North Carolina's the favorite. You look at any betting site, and it's North Carolina by a lot. Who is going to be with them in the final, in your opinion?
I think it might be a repeat of the 2019 championship game. I'm going to go with the Red Stars. As much as they didn't manage to replace Kerr technically on paper, I think when you've got a spine, like we mentioned, of Nair, of Ertz, of Yuki Nagasato, you have so much quality in that team that, and like I say, I think mentally they have a point to prove after that championship game, and they'll want revenge. And hopefully for them, if they do make it to the final, it's a different story from 2019.
I'm going with Washington. I'm really starting to believe in what the Washington Spirit are putting together on and off the field. I mean, we didn't even get into the off-the-field stuff with some of these teams. The league has new sponsors. Teams have new sponsors. Washington has CBS on the front of their kits now. But Washington, with the youth, with a player like Lavelle, who you put a player like that into a tournament format, and we've seen it at World Cups. She was one of those players at a World Cup where they just get into a rhythm and take it over. I think Washington makes that next step. Chicago's going to be dangerous. I think Utah and Portland might wilt a little bit as the event goes on. I think their age might catch up to them a little bit. I think Washington and Chicago are definitely the two, and I'll lean to the Spirit.
Okay, we'll pick opposites, but I'm excited about the Spirit too. Like I say, Lavelle is just a tournament soccer player, and that doesn't, no disrespect to her, but she's got that endurance, and she enjoys playing, and you can just tell she enjoys playing, and she doesn't want to step off that pitch. And hopefully, she can inspire those players, those young players around them. And what better player to look up to and have on your team than a Lavelle who was in your shoes only a few years ago?
All right, so I'm not going to let you get away without picking the goalkeepers. Who are the goalkeepers who stand out to you in an event like this?
Okay, so you've got the maturity and experience of Alyssa Nair, who, again, not a fan of for her penalty saving, but I think that as critical as I've been in her of the past, she won
me over at the last World Cup.
Yes, exactly. She had been real disappointing to me towards that, but she showed real guts and maturity, and I think her defense started to trust her in the World Cup last year, and she's playing with Julia Ertz, like I say, and I think they're going to be a real sight to be reckoned with when it comes defensive. So I would rate her for my mature, experienced goalkeeper. Then we already talked about Kaylin Sheridan, who's a young one. And then I love Stephanie Labbe from Canada with North Carolina Courage. But how much do we get to see of her? That's the question. I talk about this, but great teams often have goalkeepers that aren't busy. So that's a different challenge, because if she's not busy, she has to stay focused throughout the entire game. She might not be called on for 93 minutes, and then in the 94th minute of stoppage time, she has to make a big save. And that's what's going to be a struggle for a player like that, who has such a good team in front of her dominating, that she has to stay focused and be ready when she's called upon. So she's a quality goalkeeper, has the experience with the Canadian national team. And then I like Jane Campbell as well. You mentioned earlier, Jason, how she's kind of been on the corners of the U.S. women's national team. This is a good stage for her. She's still young. I don't think she's more than, 25, 26, potentially. So she's still got time. Goalkeepers, they're a maturing breed. You can be 30 and pushing into the national team. So I think she'll have a point to prove too. I think it'll be a good time for goalkeepers. I am putting a disclaimer out there that it's difficult for a goalkeeper right now. It's difficult during COVID. They haven't been able to train properly for a long period of time until the rules changed recently. It's not easy to have a huge gap from training and stay fresh. It's not easy to get your game freshness back, because for a goalkeeper, the difference between practice and match day is substantial. So for those goalkeepers that haven't had match minutes in a long while, it's going to be tough to get that freshness back. And then you've got the added difference of, I think all but the final were played on turf as well. Is that correct? It's turf?
Yeah, that will wear teams down a little bit, and it'll be difficult for
And
goalkeepers
in
at
goal,
times too.
I hate it. A lot of goalkeepers hate it. Unless you grew up or your collegiate team played on turf as a goalkeeper, you hate the turf. So I think that's one to watch too, because we might see some awkward bobbles or bounces on the turf. So we'll keep praying to the goalkeeper gods that they all have good performances.
I think with this event, there's going to be some new names coming out of it that we don't know, that we didn't talk about, that are going to emerge as new superstars. There's going to be some old familiar names that maybe have lost their spot in a national team, or maybe just veterans of this league who are going to have a spotlight on them like they've never had before. I feel like we're going to learn a lot about the overall player pool of the league in this event. And maybe, and I was worried when you see the players opt out, when you see some of the injuries of players who aren't going to be there, you get worried about the star power, you get worried about who's going to turn your head in this event. I think the league is going to get people's attention with this event, and we're going to have a much deeper list of people and players to talk about coming out of it.
Yeah, 100%. It's opened the doors for players that we don't know about to come and be the stars of the show. And as much as we're missing those familiar faces, you know what? Maybe this is time for a couple of people to come out that have been hiding, a couple of stars in the making to be sort of have that light shone upon them. And again, because of the tournament format, I'm sure we're going to have plenty of different faces stepping onto that pitch with a chance to shine. So I'm excited to see the standard of the league as a whole, and it's going to show the squad depth that all these teams have, and we're not going to run out of names to talk about. I'm pretty sure about that.
Well, we'll have 2 games to talk about on Monday to recap. We'll have 2 more to preview in a little more depth as we hear more about how the managers are going to approach the games on Tuesday. We'll also look ahead to Wednesday's games as well. So we have another show coming on Monday, roughly around the same time. It'll come out around dinner time, so be on the lookout for it. Those of you who listen to this before the opening games and after the opening games, tweet at us what you think. You can tweet at us at Soccer Down Here. You can tweet at me at Longshoe. You can tweet at Jess Talks Footy with an IE, not a Y, an IE. And
very important.
Yeah, very important. You got to make sure you're tweeting at the right person. Is there a Jess Talks Footy with a Y? Is that why you went IE?
No, I went with an IE because that's the correct way to spell footy, Jason.
Just checking. Hey, some people get kind of creative with their spellings.
Plonker of the day.
Man, I already got Plonker of the day. Not cool. All right, so tweet at us what you think about the games on the first game day of the NWSL Challenge Cup, and tweet at us what you think about the games in midweek. Let us know what you're thinking. We'll talk about all of that on Monday. Jess, thanks for hanging out and calling me a plonker.
Thank you so much. And it's a term of endearment, I promise.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll discuss that on Monday. Thanks for listening, y'all. We'll talk to you very soon.